Welcome to Sonara's Deep Dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we sift through the most complex topics in history and culture, extracting the clearest, most surprising insights just for you. Today, we are shuffling through centuries of history, myth, and deep philosophy to unravel the secret life of the world's most recognized symbolic system, the tarot.
It's a fantastic topic.
It really is. When you look at those 78 pieces of art, whether it's the dramatic image of the tower, or the quiet contemplation of the Two of Cups, or that fearless step of the Fool, you're looking at images that have been interpreted, redesigned, and debated for over half a millennium.
Absolutely. These icons of fate, fortune, and human psychology are recognized everywhere.
The story of how a luxury Italian card game became the world's most famous tool for spiritual guidance, well, it's riddled with some fascinating historical misdirections.
It really is a phenomenal historical detective story. Our mission today is to uncover that true trajectory of the tarot. We've collected sources spanning 600 years. From the super restrictive aristocratic courts of Renaissance Italy all the way to the democratized digital dashboards of modern social media.
So the goal is to trace the true origins, figure out exactly when and why the switch flipped from, say, game to magic, and really understand the key figures who created the decks millions of people use every single day.
That's the plan.
And before we even open that first history book, let's just deliver the single biggest insight. The one piece of information that kind of resets all the common misconceptions.
Ooh, do it.
If you've ever read an old book that traces the deck back to ancient Egypt or the lost knowledge of the pharaohs, we need you to just discard that immediately.
Yes, that's the most surprising initial fact, and it completely demolishes that whole 18th century occult fantasy. Tarot was invented right here in Europe. Specifically, northern Italy.
And here's the real kicker.
The kicker is, for the first 300 years of its existence, it was used purely for playing a high-stakes trick-taking game.
Like a Renaissance version of bridge or something.
Exactly. Think of it like bridge or euchre. The idea that it was secretly an ancient Egyptian manuscript is a beautifully constructed myth, but it is, strictly speaking, a myth. One invented centuries after the cards themselves.
Okay, so if we're starting in Italy, not Egypt, where did the cards themselves come from?
Well, to appreciate the innovation of the tarot, we have to look at its precursors. Playing cards themselves are not European inventions. They first show up in Europe in the late 14th century.
How'd they get there?
They migrated along trade routes, most likely filtering in through the Mamluks of Egypt, which, probably adds to the later Egyptian confusion.
Okay. And these weren't our familiar suits, hearts, clubs, diamonds, spades.
No, not at all. The early European suits mirrored the imported ones. So you had cups, swords, batons, or wands and coins, which later become pentacles.
It's also worth noting the deeper global roots trace back even earlier, right, to playing cards that emerged in China during the Tang Dynasty. So we're talking somewhere between the 7th and 10th centuries.
Exactly. So the concept of a multi-suit deck for gaming is ancient. But the specific 78 card structure of the tarot, that is distinctly European.
So where does that invention happen?
That happens in northern Italy in the early 15th century. This new deck was known as Carta da Trionfi,
which literally translates to
Cards of Triumphs.
And we're not talking about something invented in a tavern for the common folk. This was an invention driven by aristocratic demand.
Oh, absolutely. These first recorded decks appeared in a kind of quadrilateral of northern Italian cities: Milan, Ferrara, Florence, and Bologna. And they were not for the mass market. These were lavish, bespoke luxury items.
It's like hand-painted.
They were truly stunning works of art. We have surviving decks today, like the magnificent Visconti and Sforza decks. They were commissioned for the rulers of Milan in the 1440s and 50s.
Wow.
And yes, they were hand-painted, meticulously detailed, and often adorned with actual gold leaf. Owning one was an immediate sign of immense wealth, privilege, and, cultural sophistication.
So they're status symbols.
Big time. They reflected the era's fascination with humanism, classical learning, and this very complex, symbolic court culture.
So if they weren't being used for divination, what was the function of all this beautiful symbolic imagery?
The art really reflected the moral and philosophical atmosphere of the court. The imagery of that added suit, the triumphs or trionfi, was essentially an allegorical depiction of the Renaissance world's hierarchical structure.
So you'd have, like, the emperor and the pope.
Exactly. You had figures representing secular power, like the emperor and the empress, and spiritual authority, like the pope and the popes. Then you had abstract virtues, like temperance and justice, and universal concepts, like time and death.
I read that some of the oldest pacts even had faith, hope, and charity.
They did. The theological virtues were right in there. It's like a moral lesson wrapped up in a game for the nobility.
Okay, let's get into the structure, because that's the thing that's really endured. What exactly did those Visconti artists add to a standard 56-card Italian deck to make it a tarot deck?
The key innovation was the addition of a fifth suit. This was a set of 22 allegorical trump cards, which we would later call the major arcana.
So you have the regular 4 suit.
Right. The 56 minor arcana, that's your 4 suits. Cups, swords, batons, and coins. Each has 10 pip cards, ace through 10, and 4 court cards, king, queen, knight, and a page or knave.
And then on top of that, you add these 22 special cards.
21 sequentially numbered trump cards, plus 1 very special card, the Fool, or Il Mato.
So what was the Fool doing in this high-stakes game? Was it the highest trump?
No, and that's the interesting part. Its function was purely utilitarian in the game. It was essentially a wild card or an excuse card.
An excuse card.
Yeah, it usually didn't belong to the numbered trump sequence and it couldn't win a trick, but it allowed the player to avoid playing a trump card when they needed to save one for later.
So it's a strategic piece.
Exactly. It was separate, kind of floating, yet crucial to the mechanics of the game. And this separation of the Fool from the numbered trumps is really important because it foreshadows the unique kind of liminal position it holds in modern interpretations as the start of the journey.
So for 3 centuries, the primary, in fact, the only recorded use of this deck was a card game for Europe's elite. That's the fundamental historical bedrock we need to start with.
That's it. No magic, no fortune telling, just a game.
Okay, so how does this Italian game become a French phenomenon?
Well, once the Italian Wars concluded in the 16th century, the game, like a lot of cultural artifacts, spread north, primarily into France and Switzerland.
And as it spreads, it has to change, right? You can't have everyone hand-painting these decks.
Exactly. As card production moved from lavish hand-painting to woodcut printing, which is a much cheaper, more mass-producible process, a standardized pattern became necessary.
And this standardization leads us directly to the Tarot de Marseille, or TDM. Now, it's important to clarify, this isn't a single deck maker, is it? It's more of a structural pattern.
That's a great point. It's a pattern that emerged in southern France, especially around Marseille, by the late 17th century. The name itself, Tarot de Marseille, was only applied much later in 1856 by a historian named Romain Merlin.
But the pattern was established long before that.
Oh, yeah. The pattern established the visual grammar. We have surviving cards from as early as 1639, from producers like Philippe Vacher of Marseille, which show this distinct look. Bold, simple woodcut designs, a clear numbering system for the trumps, and it kept that distinct European Christian flavor.
Right, with cards like La Papesse, the Popes, and Le Pape the Pope.
Yes, and that specific TDM pattern is the crucial deck that the 18th century occultists would later stumble upon and decide was some secret Egyptian cipher. It was accessible, it was standardized, and it was widespread enough to capture their imagination.
But there's a really significant visual difference between the TDM and the decks that most of us would recognize today, and it's not in the major arcana.
No, it's not. The biggest contrast lies in the minor arcana.
This is the second major historical aha moment, and it explains why the Rider-Waite-Smith deck was so revolutionary later on. So tell us what the TDM minor arcana actually looked like.
They were non-scenic, meaning the pips, the numbered cards from ace through 10 in all 4 suits, only showed abstract geometric arrangements of the suit symbols.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. If you pulled the 3 of swords, you wouldn't see a heart being pierced by 3 blades like you do today. You would just see 3 swords crossing or intertwining in a pattern. If you looked at the 6 of pentacles, you'd see 6 coins arranged on the card, maybe with some flowers or banners, but no person giving money to another, just 6 coins.
So interpretation in that system couldn't rely on visual storytelling at all. You couldn't just look at the card and tell a story about it.
Not in the same way. You had to rely purely on the elemental meaning of the suit. So swords are air and intellect, wands are fire and action, and combine that with the numerological meaning of the number. 3 is synthesis, 6 is balance and harmony, and so on.
That sounds much harder.
It required a level of rote knowledge and numerological fluency that visual decks later made unnecessary. It's a very different, much more abstract way of relating to the cards. It forces you away from a simple narrative and into a more systematic study.
And we also see the influence of politics and religion even in this early phase, right? You mentioned the Catholic figures, the Pope and the popes, could be controversial.
They were, definitely, especially as the game spread to regions where there were tensions between Catholic and Protestant communities.
But what did they do?
There's a fascinating variant called the Tarot of Besançon. It simply replaced the controversial Le Papes and Le Pape with the Roman deities Juno and Jupiter.
Ah, clever workaround.
It was a very practical, localized modification to make the deck acceptable in these culturally sensitive areas. And it just reinforces the idea that these images were not sacred, fixed artifacts. They were mutable. They were adapted by local printers to suit local markets.
Okay, so here's where the story takes a sharp turn, a really sharp one.
This is the pivot. We go from 300 years of cards being used purely for games to this intense, sudden fascination with them as mystical objects. The entire perception shifts in the late 18th century in France.
And the single biggest catalyst for this transformation wasn't an artist or a card maker. It was an intellectual, Antoine Court de Gebelin, in 1781.
That's the man.
So why did he, a Protestant clergyman and a Freemason, decide that this mass-produced French card game was actually a lost sacred text from Egypt?
It was a perfect storm, really. You had two powerful factors. First, the intellectual mood of the late 18th century Enlightenment fostered this intense, almost frantic fascination with ancient Egypt. Historians call it Egyptomania.
People believed all ancient wisdom came from Egypt.
Exactly. They thought it held the secrets to all civilization. And second, and this is key, the ability to read hieroglyphs was completely lost at this time. The Rosetta Stone wouldn't be deciphered for another few decades until the 1820s.
So ancient Egypt was a perfect blank slate. You could project whatever you wanted onto it.
Precisely. So when Court de Gebelin saw the imagery of a TDM deck, especially those allegorical major arcana, he was utterly convinced they encoded the lost Book of Thoth, an ancient Egyptian repository of wisdom that predated Moses. He published this whole thesis in his massive work, Le Monde Primitif.
And it's so important for you, the listener, to grasp that this was completely unfounded. There was zero historical or archaeological evidence to support it, but its cultural power was immense.
It was. It instantly transformed the tarot from a game into a profound, esoteric text. It provided the philosophical justification for using it as a tool for divination and secret wisdom.
And where there's a new philosophy, there's someone ready to monetize it.
Always. And that brings us to Etteilla, or Jean-Baptiste Alliette. He was maybe the greatest opportunist in the history of the tarot.
What was his background?
He was a wig maker and a self-proclaimed occultist, and he was the very first person we know of to make a professional living purely as a tarot reader. He basically invented the job of the modern fortune teller.
So he saw Gebelin's myth as a business opportunity. How did he capitalize on it, and what were his big contributions that we still use today?
Well, he published his own deck, the Livre de Thoth Tarot, around 1789. It was the first deck ever explicitly designed for cartomancy, for divination, not for gaming. He reordered the major arcana and added all sorts of Egyptian and astrological motifs, trying to correct the TDM based on his own theories.
But what about the practice itself?
His two most enduring contributions were about systematizing the meanings. First, Etteilla was the one who assigned specific, detailed divinatory meanings to all 78 cards. Before him, the minor arcana were just numbers and elements. He gave them concrete interpretations.
And the second thing?
Second, he originated the use of reversed cards. The idea that a card has a different, often negative, meaning when it appears upside down, that was him. He also developed the first known structured card spreads. You really can't practice modern tarot without using the foundations Etteilla built.
So Etteilla made the practice practical and commercial. But the intellectual heft, that comprehensive framework, was cemented later in the 19th century by the French occultist Eliphas Lévy.
Lévy is the one who really elevated the tarot from a fortune-telling gimmick back into a serious, rigorous intellectual system. He was deeply interested in integrating tarot into Western Hermeticism.
How did he do that?
He did it by strongly tying the 22 major arcana to the 22 paths of the Kabbalistic tree of life and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet.
Okay, let's pause there, because Kabbalah is a word that's crucial to modern tarot, but it can sound like impenetrable jargon. What is the basic connection Lévy made?
In short, Kabbalah is a system of Jewish mysticism. The tree of life is its central diagram. It's a map of the universe's creation and the path of the soul back to the divine. It's made of 10 spheres called Sephiroth, which are connected by 22 paths.
And Levy just put the major arcana onto those paths.
He superimposed the 22 major arcana, the trumps and the fool, onto those 22 paths. And this synthesis was revolutionary. It gave the deck an instant, verifiable philosophical foundation. It provided this complex, systematic structure that integrated the cards into a wider cosmic, astrological, and numerological worldview.
So it became more than just a deck of cards. It became a key to understanding the universe.
That's exactly right. And this leads us to that critical insight. While the major arcana imagery seems ancient and full of deep meaning, that complex relationship with Kabbalah was an association built from the 18th century onward. It was not part of the original design by those 15th century Italian artists.
So that intellectual energy that Levy fostered, it eventually crosses the English Channel. And this culminates in the birth of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, or HOGD, founded in 1888.
Yes. This influential occult society took Levy's work and formalized it, standardized it, and made the para the absolute core of its curriculum.
They basically took his synthesis and turned it into an exhaustive, precise system.
They did. This was largely the work of S.L. McGregor Mathers. They created incredibly detailed correspondences for all 78 cards. They essentially wrote the first real occult textbook based on the tarot.
So when you pick up a modern esoteric tarot book today, and it links a card to a planet or an element or a zodiac sign, you're probably looking at the Golden Dawn system.
Almost certainly. And their systematization went incredibly deep. The major arcana were assigned to the paths, Hebrew letters, planets, and zodiac signs. Then, they rigorously mapped the minor arcana, the aces, through tens to the 10 Sephiroth, the spheres on the Tree of Life.
And they went even further than that.
They did.
Yeah.
They linked the pips from 2 through 10 to the astrological decans.
Okay, let's quickly clarify that term. We mentioned Sephiroth, or emanations of God, but what are decans and why did they matter so much to the Golden Dawn?
The decans are essential for depth. They are 36 segments of the zodiac. Each of the 12 zodiac signs is divided into 3 10-degree segments, so you get 36 decans in total.
And they assigned a card to each one.
They linked each numbered pip card from 2 to 10 to a specific decan. This gave the cards incredibly precise astrological timing and meaning. It moved them beyond just general concepts into highly detailed energetic shifts.
They also made a structural change that is now standard in most decks, but it was done for purely internal esoteric reasons. They swapped 2 of the major arcana cards.
That's right. To ensure the cards aligned perfectly with their astrological correspondences, the Golden Dawn swapped the order of strength and justice.
How so?
Strength moved from its traditional position at card 11 to 8th, which linked it to the zodiac sign Leo. And justice moved from 8 to 11, linking it to Libra. This move, which was all about esoteric mathematics, is why the most popular decks today are numbered differently from the older TDM.
And all of this esoteric knowledge, which was once secretive and confined to the inner circles of the Golden Dawn, just bursts into the mainstream. And it does so thanks to the most famous deck of all time, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck.
The RWS deck, published in 1909, it was created by 2 former Golden Dawn members, Arthur Edward Waite, the scholar who provided the concepts, and Pamela Colman Smith, the brilliant artist and illustrator.
And this deck was revolutionary because it was conceived from the very start as an accessible divinatory tool for the public.
Yes. It took the secrets of the Golden Dawn system and translated them into an overt visual language that anyone could understand.
And here it is, the true revolutionary aha moment that fundamentally changed how tarot is read across the entire world. Pamela Colman Smith illustrated the minor arcana.
Yes. This is the single biggest change in the history of the tarot deck. Smith fully illustrated all 56 minor arcana cards with narrative, allegorical scenes.
So we go from those abstract geometric pips of the TDM
to actual stories. Suddenly, the 3 of Swords showed 3 swords piercing a heart, clearly signifying heartbreak. The 10 of Pentacles showed a wealthy, established family enjoying stability.
It democratized the tarot overnight. I mean, before RWS, if you pulled the 5 of Pentacles from a TDM deck, you'd see 5 abstract coins. And you'd have to remember that 5 means difficulty and Pentacles means material reality. So you'd interpret it as loss or poverty.
But in the RWS deck, you see 2 impoverished figures walking in the snow past a brightly lit church window. They are visibly excluded and suffering. The image itself tells the story.
It made the deck so much more intuitive. It required far less memorization.
It opened the practice to the masses. It was a genius move.
And Waite also made sure the iconography of the major arcana was modernized. He carefully removed the overt Catholic imagery.
He did. The popes became the high priestess, which emphasizes esoteric knowledge. The pope became the hierophant, emphasizing spiritual teaching.
And you changed the lover's card.
Yes, from a simple medieval wedding scene to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, which reinforces the theme of choice, duality, and the link to the zodiac sign Gemini.
You really can't overstate the RWS deck's legacy. It's the template.
It is. There are estimates of well over 100 million copies circulating today. It cemented the foundational visual language for virtually every deck produced since. It proved that visual accessibility was the key to global adoption.
So, despite the RWS deck's massive global success, not everyone was satisfied. The esoteric world is rarely static.
Not at all.
And a few decades later, another former Golden Dawn member, a man known for his relentless pursuit of depth and complexity, decided to create his own symbolic masterpiece.
We are talking, of course, about Aleister Crowley.
And the monumental creation of the Thoth Tarot deck.
The Thoth Tarot is often seen as the absolute apex of complex esoteric synthesis. Crowley had developed his own philosophical and religious system, Thelema, and he believed the RWS deck had simplified the ancient mysteries too much.
So he commissioned an artist.
He commissioned the artist Lady Frida Harris in 1938. Their project was supposed to be brief, but it took 5 years. They finished in 1943.
And this deck is essentially a visual textbook on 20th century Western occultism.
It really is. It reflects Crowley's Thelemic philosophy and his updated, extremely detailed understanding of Kabbalah and astrology. Harris translated his intricate, often abstract instructions into this intensely symbolic, geometric, Art Deco-influenced style.
The key was that the art was meant to convey deep philosophical concepts, not simple narrative scenes like the RWS.
Exactly. And Crowley made significant structural and naming changes to the major arcana to align them with his system. Justice became adjustment, strength became lust,
And judgment became the eon.
yes, explicitly marking the transition from the old religious systems to the new Thelemic system of the Eon of Horus.
He even retitled the court cards, changing king, knight, and page to knight, prince, and princess to match his own elemental hierarchy.
He did, and while the minor arcana in the Thoth deck aren't narrative like the RWS pips, they are definitely not abstract like the TDM. They are saturated with symbolism, linking every single one of the numbered cards to those 36 decans of the zodiac.
Which gave the Thoth deck unprecedented precision for astrological readings.
Absolutely. So if the RWS deck made tarot accessible to the masses, the Thoth deck ensured that the study of tarot remained intellectually rigorous and challenging for the advanced student, a remarkable duality.
But regardless of the specific deck, whether it's TDM, RWS, or Thoth, the true power of the major arcana today is often understood through a psychological framework. And that's a huge conceptual shift driven by 20th century psychology.
This is the massive psychological pivot. The major arcana is almost universally interpreted today as the Fool's Journey,
A narrative arc.
a powerful universal narrative arc that charts the soul's path of self-discovery. It starts with the Fool at card 0, who holds infinite naive potential, and ends with the World at card X8Y, representing completion, integration, and wholeness.
And the person who gave this framework serious credibility outside of occult circles was the pioneering Swiss psychologist Carl Jung.
Jung never intended the tarot to be a diagnostic tool, but he saw the cards as profound representations of universal archetypes. These are patterns that reside deep within the collective unconscious, the inherited reservoir of memory shared by all of humanity.
So in the Jungian view, the major arcana cards map the process of, what was the term?
Individuation. The lifelong psychological process of integrating all aspects of the self-conscious and unconscious to achieve wholeness.
And this reframes the entire practice of reading tarot.
Completely. It's no longer just fortune-telling. It becomes a profound tool for self-reflection. It's a mirror that helps you identify where you are on your unique journey toward an integrated self.
So that journey has been immense. From a 15th century game to an 18th century myth, a 19th century textbook, and a 20th century psychological map. And all of that has led us to right now, a massive, accelerating global revival.
The market for tarot and oracle decks is experiencing dynamic growth. Sources show that sales have increased dramatically since 2020. The compound annual growth rate, or AGR, is pushing well over 20% in recent years. This isn't a niche hobby anymore. It's a mainstream cultural phenomenon.
I think it really reflects a huge cultural need. We see these spikes in interest around transitional times, solstices, New Year's, moments of high stress.
Right.
It suggests people are turning to the tarot as a practical tool for seeking clarity and grounding during uncertain times, almost like a mental wellness practice.
And the engine driving this mainstream popularity is, without a doubt, social media. Platforms like TikTok and Instagram are the new esoteric bookstores.
You see hashtags like hashtag Tarot Talk trending all the time.
Exactly. It makes the practice visible, fun, and immediately accessible to millions of new users who are primarily looking for self-discovery and a sense of community.
And the visual nature of the RWS revolution just meshes perfectly with the visual story-driven culture of Instagram and TikTok.
Yeah.
You don't have to read a complex book to start engaging with the imagery. You can just look at the card and start reflecting.
And this broad exposure has also fueled incredible diversification in the market. The demand today is not just for RWS clones. There is a huge push for decks with unique artistic styles, inclusive and culturally diverse imagery.
Decks that reflect the diverse identities of the users themselves. Decks addressing Asian American experiences or indigenous spirituality or modern queer identity. It's moving so far beyond the Eurocentric Victorian imagery of the original RWS.
It is. But perhaps the most profound modern evolution is the solid establishment of secular tarot. This approach effectively strips away the requirement for belief in any mystical force, any spirit guide, or any literal fortune-telling.
So how does it work then?
Well, that's the essential demarcation. Secular tarot practitioners use the cards purely for meditation, for journaling, for introspection, and personal growth. The card itself, in this view, is just a neutral container for centuries of human wisdom, numerology, symbolism, archetypes. But the power resides entirely in the reader's engagement with the image.
So the card isn't dictating the future, it's just prompting an internal dialogue.
Exactly. The system works because the layered meanings are already embedded in the cards. When you pull a card at random, you are externalizing an internal, perhaps unconscious, conflict onto a tangible image.
It's like a mirror.
It's a therapeutic tool or a mirror. It gives you a new, objective perspective that helps you identify blind spots, interrogate your assumptions, and work through emotional problems, all without the non-secular baggage. It uses the structure built by mystics over centuries, but grounds the outcome in psychology and personal intuition.
The randomness of the pull simply serves to bypass the usual mental filters and biases we use when trying to analyze our own problems. It forces us into a conversation with ourselves we might not have otherwise started.
That's a perfect way to put it. Hashtag HowTrack Outro.
We have completed the journey of this remarkable deck. We started with the 15th century Italian luxury game, the Visconti and Sforza, with its abstract pips.
We navigated through the 18th century French occult myth court de Gébelin and Etteilla that falsely linked it to Egypt and invented divinatory practices.
We embraced the 19th century systematization by the Golden Dawn and the intellectual rigor of Kabbalah.
Right up to the 20th century artistic revolution of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which made the minor arcana finally illustrative and accessible to the entire world.
Just an amazing trajectory.
The most enduring, brilliant element is that dual 78-card structure that has persisted across every single era. You have the 22 major arcana handling the big, sweeping, archetypal life lessons, the universal journey of the soul.
And then the day-to-day stuff.
And you have the 56 minor arcana handling the day-to-day practical realities through the 4 elemental suits. Wands for action and career, cups for emotion and relationships, swords for intellect and challenges, and pentacles for the material world. Together, they capture the entire messy spectrum of human existence.
It is truly incredible how much human history and philosophical evolution is distilled into those 78 pieces of paper, just constantly being reinvented to suit our needs.
And that leads to a final provocative thought for you to consider.
Let's hear it.
Every major era adapted the tarot to reflect its deepest cultural need, from an aristocratic status symbol to an esoteric textbook to a psychological mirror. So if the RWS deck revolutionized what the cards look like by illustrating the minor arcana and democratizing the practice, what profound new cultural and symbolic system will the next generation of deck creators weave into the major arcana to reflect the complexities and challenges of the hyper-connected, often fragmented world we live in today? Will the next great revolution be political, scientific, or technological? And how will those 22 archetypes shift to reflect the concerns of the 21st century?
Thanks for tuning into Sonara's Deep Dive. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our future episodes. I bring you fresh content every week. Thanks for listening.